Madam President, over the recess, we saw some hopeful steps amid violence in Israel and Gaza. After more than 6 weeks, it must have been unimaginable horror. Nearly 40 hostages were released by Hamas, with another 10 or so hopefully still to be released even today. These innocents should never have been taken in the first place, and it's long overdue that any still are being held and not released. This includes a young man with ties to our state named Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who was horribly injured during the October 7th terrorist attack by Hamas and subsequently taken hostage. I've spoken to his family, and I know you have as well. It is a heartbreak to think what they are going through. The agreement to release some of the hostages included a pause in fighting to allow for desperately needed humanitarian supplies to help innocent Palestinian civilians. We must remind ourselves that it is the Hamas terrorism that we want to eradicate, and unfortunately, thousands of Palestinian people are being caught in the crossfires. I hope we can build upon this deal to negotiate the release of the remaining hostages, bring an end to the violence in a way that removes Hamas from power, allows the rebuilding of Gaza, and provides real progress toward a viable two-state solution. A two-state solution will require political leadership and courage from all parties. I was really pleased to read President Biden's clear thinking on this in the Washington Post recently. He wrote, "This much is clear. A two-state solution is the only way to ensure the long-term security of both Israel and Palestinian people. Though right now it may seem like that future has never been further away, this crisis has made it more imperative than ever." The President gets it. It isn't just a military victory that will bring peace to the Middle East. It is a final resolution of a battle which has gone on for decades. In the meantime, I also want to call on both sides to take another step in protecting innocent civilians. In this case, the reopening and operation of key Gaza hospitals under the supervision of a credible, neutral third party. Some of you may have heard me speak a few weeks ago about what Chicago area volunteer doctors, also the presiding officer's friend, described as conditions in these besieged hospitals. Amputations of the limbs of children without anesthesia, relying only on Tylenol for pain relief, and using vinegar instead of disinfectants to clean and heal wounds. Those are the desperate situations those hospitals have reached. Needs have only grown since I made that speech, with dozens of premature babies recently evacuated to Egypt for life-saving care. All of this was, of course, complicated by Hamas' depraved use of hospitals to mask its activities. Let's be clear. Innocent Palestinians are also hostage to Hamas, whose members clearly don't care about those people in Gaza. But with the securing of these critical medical facilities, it is now time for both sides to agree to do something that seems so obvious I dare not state it, but I will. Hospitals should be off-limit to fighting. That is the only way they can be able to effectively function again. A neutral third party, such as the United Nations, could monitor these hospitals to ensure they are only used to treat patients and that supplies go only and directly toward medical care. The other week, several senators had a call with doctors involved in the humanitarian response in Gaza. The senators presiding was one of the sponsors. They reminded us not only of the dire medical needs of those injured in the fighting, but also of the ongoing and future medical needs, including hundreds of upcoming births that demand functioning hospitals. In the days ahead, I'm going to reach out to the UN Secretary General Guterres about implementing the idea of neutral third parties guaranteeing the integrity of the hospitals that still remain. This leads me to President's emergency supplemental request. I was glad that Congress avoided another manufactured government shutdown crisis just days before Thanksgiving. I could not help to think of how history will judge this Congress, which has distinguished itself with Band-Aid budgets, keeping our lurching economy in bay and not helping us move forward on critical issues that American families really care about. Why don't we do something about the cost of prescription drugs? Why don't we deal with the banning of assault weapons, which an overwhelming majority of Americans support? We could do things that would make the streets safer and people safer in their homes and make life more enjoyable and affordable. But instead, we lurch from one manufactured political crisis to the next. It is time for us to act like senators instead of political squabbling. But that does not end our responsibility to deal with national security and humanitarian needs from Israel and Gaza to the Ukraine. After all, where did Hamas leaders turn up shortly after their despicable attack on Israel on October 7th? You guessed it, sitting down with Vladimir Putin in Moscow. What nation helped supply weapons and training to Hamas? What nation is helping Russia with weapons to fight in Ukraine? Iran. Who hopes distractions and divisions over the Middle East distract the West from the war in Ukraine? Vladimir Putin. A few months ago, Ukrainian President Zelensky, in the Senate chamber just a few steps away from this chamber, starkly told the senators in both parties who gathered, if the U.S. stops its aid to Ukraine, Russia will win the war. He said it not once, but twice to make it clear. And if Russia wins in Ukraine, it would be naive to think they'll stop there. The cost to the U.S. in repelling a further Russian aggression will only continue to multiply. The other day, I was reflecting on a walk I took in Maidan Square in Kyiv with the late Senator John McCain in 2014 with a visiting congressional delegation. McCain led a bipartisan delegation there just after Russia seized Crimea. After Kyiv, we were supposed to go to Donetsk in Eastern Europe, but we had to cancel as Russia was already destabilizing the region in preparation for its land grab. John McCain and our delegation walked somberly in Maidan Square in Kyiv through the makeshift shrines to those who lost their lives fighting for democracy, the freedom movement that so threatened Putin. And I cannot help but wonder what John McCain would say today, or Ronald Reagan, who called the Soviet Union an evil empire, as many in their party in Congress who hesitate to stand up to Putin and advance American security interests. Let's not make a mistake that would cost the world and generations in the future by not advancing this critical supplemental funding request before the end of this calendar year. I urge my colleagues to support President Biden's national security supplemental request to aid Ukraine, Israel, the Indo-Pacific, and humanitarian crisis around the globe, including Gaza. Madam President, I yield the floor.